Imagine stepping outside on a winter morning where the sun barely rises. The air slices your skin like knives. Your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth, and the world is buried under snow. Now picture this: no heaters, no hot showers, not even glass windows to shut out the wind. For the Vikings, this wasn't a nightmare, it was daily life. But how did they survive? And more than that, how did they thrive in a world that should have killed them? The truth is, the Vikings had survival secrets most of us have never heard about. They put dry grass inside their boots to keep their feet warm, even slept on straw beds that they changed before the straw got wet, and burned peat, a type of soil fuel, to make fires that lasted longer. They shared homes with animals for body heat, told sagas that turned suffering into honor, and believed their gods demanded endurance in the face of bitter cold. While we complain when the Wi-Fi drops for a few hours, the Vikings faced months of darkness, icy winds and snow that never seemed to end. Yet even in these harsh conditions they did not stay home. They built ships, set sail, and explored new lands like Iceland, Greenland, and even Vinland, proving they could survive and thrive in colder, harsher worlds. Their daily survival was not just about keeping warm or finding food, it was also about courage, planning, and belief. This is why their story is more than fire and fur. It is a story of mindset, myth, and a culture that could withstand the frozen north. The Viking world stretched across Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and later into Iceland and Greenland. Winters in these lands were long, dark, and harsh. Snow piled up for months, rivers and lakes froze solid, and the days were so short that sometimes the sun barely rose at all. The Vikings knew how dangerous these winters could be, and they spent the whole year preparing for the freezing months. Every part of their lives, from the clothes they wore to the food they stored, was carefully planned to survive the cold. But even with careful preparation, there was one thing that could make all the difference between life and death: their home. The longhouse was more than a shelter. It was a shield against the icy winds, heavy snow, and long nights. Without a strong, warm home, all their planning could have been wasted. The first line of defense was the house itself. Vikings built longhouses, large wooden halls covered with thick layers of turf and clay. These walls acted like natural insulation, holding in heat and keeping the freezing wind and snow outside. The roofs were heavy with grass and soil, adding extra protection against the cold. Inside, a fire burned day and night, providing warmth and light. Smoke from the flames rose and escaped through small holes in the roof. Though the air was smoky, it served a useful purpose. It helped dry and preserve food hanging above the fire, keeping it safe to eat during the long winter months. Life in the longhouse was crowded but practical. Families, servants, and even animals often shared the same space. The body heat from cows, goats, and sheep added warmth, making the house livable despite the freezing temperatures outside. It was smoky, tight, and far from the comforts we know today. But every detail, from walls to fire, from animals to stored food, was designed to keep the Vikings alive. In this way, the longhouse was not just a home, it was the heart of survival. At the center of that survival was the fire. For the Vikings, fire was much more than comfort, it was life itself. Wood was not easy to find in large amounts, so every log and branch was used carefully. Wasting fuel could mean a freezing night or worse. To make sure warmth lasted through the long nights, they also burned peat, a type of soil cut from bogs and dried for fuel. Peat burned slowly, producing a steady, long-lasting heat that could keep the entire longhouse warm, even when the wind howled outside and snow blanketed the roof. Every evening, families tended to the fire like a treasure. They added just enough wood or peat to keep the embers alive until morning. The fire was the center of daily life. It cooked meals, dried meat and fish, and gave everyone a place to gather and stay warm. It brought life, safety, and a sense of security in a world where freezing temperatures were a constant threat. Even today, we often take warmth for granted. We step into a heated room, turn on a heater, or start a warm car without thinking twice. The Vikings, however, had to protect their fire every single day. It was not just heat, it was survival, comfort, and a source of life in the harshest, coldest conditions imaginable. But warmth did not stop at the fire. The Vikings also relied on clothing as another vital shield against the cold. Every piece of clothing had a clear purpose to protect them from the freezing winds and snow that could bite through unprepared bodies. Wool was the true hero of their wardrobe. It kept them warm even when wet from snow or rain, something ordinary fabrics could never do. Underneath, soft linen garments were worn to trap heat and feel comfortable against the skin. Over this, thick wool tunics and heavy cloaks were layered, often fastened with metal brooches to keep them secure during work or travel. Their boots were specially prepared for icy conditions. Many were lined with fur, and sometimes they stuffed the inside with dry hay or extra wool. This simple trick kept toes from freezing during long hours outside. Hands and heads were protected as well. Gloves made of wool or fur covered fingers, and hats or hoods stopped heat from escaping through the head. Every piece of clothing worked together like a shield against the cold. It was not about looking nice, it was about surviving each bitter day. The fire warmed their homes, but wool, fur, and clever layering kept their bodies alive in the harshest winter conditions. Night was the hardest part of the winter. Even with warm homes and thick clothing, the cold could feel unbearable when the fire dimmed and darkness filled the longhouse. Families gathered on wooden platforms covered with thick straw to sleep. The straw acted like a natural mattress, softening the hard wood and adding a layer of insulation, but it was not enough by itself. To stay warm, they layered animal skins and heavy wool blankets over themselves, trapping body heat and keeping the icy air at bay. The straw beds had to be changed regularly. If the straw became damp from moisture or breath, it lost its ability to keep people warm. Fresh, dry straw was always brought in to replace it, making every night as comfortable as possible under harsh winter conditions. Children often slept between adults, sharing body heat to stay warm. Every person's warmth helped another, turning sleeping arrangements into a carefully planned family project. In this way, survival became a shared effort, and even the coldest nights could be endured together. Surviving the long, freezing Viking winters was not just about keeping warm. It was equally about having enough food. The body needed fuel to fight the cold every day, and without it, people could grow weak or even die. That is why, during the warmer months of summer and autumn, Vikings worked tirelessly to prepare for the winter ahead. They smoked fish and dried meat so it could last for months without spoiling. Pork and beef were salted to preserve them for the harshest days. Dairy products like cheese, butter, and a thick yogurt-like food called sky were carefully stored. Vegetables such as carrots, turnips, and cabbages were placed in underground pits where the earth kept them cool but prevented them from freezing completely. Every meal eaten in winter came from careful planning and months of hard work, and food did more than fill bellies, it fed strength and spirit. Sharing meals became a way to lift hearts during the long, dark months when daylight lasted only a few hours. Families and neighbors would gather around the fire to eat together, talk, and tell stories, turning even the harshest winter nights into moments of comfort and community. For the Vikings, food was life, warmth and hope, all in one, keeping both body and spirit alive until spring returned. Life did not stop just because winter had arrived. Even in the freezing cold, the Vikings had many chores to keep their homes and families running. Women spent long hours sitting by the fire, spinning wool into thread to make warm clothes for the family. The fire's heat made their work possible, but the smoky air sometimes made their eyes water. Men focused on repairing tools, sharpening weapons, fixing wooden carts, and maintaining their ships so they would be ready for spring voyages. No job was too small or unimportant. Every task helped the family survive another day. Children also had important responsibilities. They collected wood for the fire, fed the animals, and helped with small chores around the home. Even in such harsh weather, everyone played a part. The smoky air inside the longhouse also had a hidden benefit. It helped preserve meat and fish that hung above the fire, keeping it safe to eat during the long winter. At night, in the dim, flickering light of the fire, families would share stories, sing songs, or recite old sagas. These moments brought comfort, laughter, and a sense of connection, helping time pass more quickly in the dark, cold months. Life in winter was hard, but it was also full of rhythm, routine, and small joys that kept both body and spirit alive. But surviving winter was not only about staying warm or having enough food. It was also a test of the mind and spirit. Viking culture taught that hardship was a natural and even honorable part of life. The cold, the darkness, and the long months of struggle were not just obstacles, they were challenges to be faced with courage. Gods like Thor and Odin were more than protectors, they were also seen as testers, watching to see who was strong enough, brave enough, and determined enough to endure. Facing the bitter cold with courage was a way to honor these gods and prove one's worth. Sagas, myths, and stories played a big role in this mental strength. They turned the harsh, uncomfortable winters into lessons and adventures. Sitting in a smoky longhouse, listening to tales of gods and heroes, a Viking could imagine that each cold night, Each icy wind and each struggle to stay warm was part of a larger story. It was as if enduring the winter was a way to show Odin himself that they were worthy of respect and courage. This belief gave them a type of strength no fire, no blanket, and no woolen cloak could provide. It was mental power, pride, and faith all rolled into one, helping Vikings endure conditions that would have broken most people. Think about it for a moment. Today, if our heater stops working for even a few hours, we panic. A power outage for a day can make life feel impossible. We rely on technology, warmth, and modern comforts for almost everything. The Vikings lived in a world completely without these conveniences. They had no heaters, no light bulbs, no hot showers, and no quick ways to keep warm. Yet despite all this, they survived, and not just survived, they thrived. Their world was far harsher than ours. Freezing winds, heavy snow, and months of darkness were normal for them. But in many ways, this difficulty made them stronger. They didn't simply fight against the cold. They learned to live with it, to respect it, and to use it as a part of their daily life. Every layer of clothing, every fire, every chore, and every shared meal was a way to adapt to the winter. Over time, the cold became less of an enemy and more of a teacher. The Vikings' strength was not only in their bodies, but in their ability to accept the harshness of their environment and turn it into a way of life. Every small thing they did was planned to survive the cold. Each little trick, from firewood to clothing to shared warmth, helped them live through the hard winter, building resilience that went beyond the body to the mind and spirit. Survival was never accidental. It was the result of careful planning, clever adaptation, and a willingness to face the cold together. So how did the Vikings survive in bitter cold without modern heating? The answer is not one thing. It was everything together. Smart houses, long-lasting fires, thick wool, shared warmth, stored food, daily chores, strong belief, and a culture that respected toughness. For them, winter was not a season to escape. It was a test to pass, a chance to prove strength, a story to tell. They survived because they accepted the cold, and in many ways they became one with it. Now explain to me what amazed you most about Viking winter survival. Could you handle even one night in a smoky longhouse with just straw and animal furs for warmth? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to discover more incredible survival stories from history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.